Today's recipe calls for the sous vide machine. Again, we're going to be making teriyaki chicken this go around. It's really simple and it's super delicious for how little effort we put into it. So with that said, let's get started.
The first thing we need to do so we can start this set it and forget it type of recipe is get our sous vide up and running. You may notice the immersion circulator has a minimum and maximum water line. It's a good rule of thumb to shoot for somewhere in the middle of those two lines. You want to do this because when we add the bag of protein into the water bath, the H2O is going to rise. So we are planning ahead to account for the level changing. This way we don't have to waste time cleaning a water mess. Attach the sous vide stick to a holding device. You can use a Cambro, a large stock pot. Any type of vessel will work as long as the sous vide machine and the product will be submerged in the clear liquid they call water. Fill the container up to the level previously mentioned. Cover the container with a lid or some kind of top. This will help keep the heat in. It'll also help reduce too much of the water from evaporating into the abyss. If you don't have a specific lid that fits the vessel, you can cover it with a half sheet tray or make a makeshift cover with some tin foil. Plug the food maker in. Set the temp on the sous vide machine to 149 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 degrees Celsius. Now that we have things preheating, we can start prepping our food. Grab a medium-sized bowl and a liquid measuring apparatus. Use the apparatus to measure out half a cup or 118 mils of a light soy sauce. Transfer the goods to the bowl. Following that, add 3 tablespoons of rice vinegar to the holding container. If you don't have rice vinegar and you don't feel like buying it, you can sub it with white vinegar instead. To counterbalance the acid, we'll add 3 tablespoons of dark brown sugar. Next, we'll add in about 1/8 teaspoon of sesame oil. This stuff has a strong flavor, so a little goes a long way. Whisk your face off to bring everything into one. Now we'll add a ton of aromatics to our sauce. The first thing we'll be adding is 6 medium to large size cloves of vampire repellent. Peel all the paper skins off the garlic. Find it helps to cut the tops and bottom off each clove. It seems like the paper skin is easier to get to, and it kind of just falls off when you do it like this. Once the strong flavored ingredient is naked, microplane the goods into the bowl. If you do not have a microplane on hand, you can use a garlic press, another type of grater, or mince the garlic with a knife. If you're using a plane, run your fingy down the back to knock loose any of the garlic that may be stuck. Peel yourself 1.2 ounces or 30 grams worth of the root. Use a spoon to get the job done. Grate the ginger into the bowl like we did with the garlic, or chop it into small pieces. Knock off any ginger that may be stuck to the stick grater. This stuff is stringy and likes to stick to the grater, so do your best to get it all out. After you're done with the microplane, rinse or clean it immediately after using. This will prevent the ginger and garlic from drying and becoming hard on the plane. Once it does dry, it makes it a nightmare to clean because everything gets stuck in the little grater teeth, so save yourself the time and take care of it right away. Give the bowl of goods a quick whisk of the face to bring it all together. Taste test the sauce, adjust as needed with a few pinches of coarse ground kosher salt. Now would also be a great time to adjust the flavor by adding more vinegar or sugar if you would like. Once you're happy with the saucy goodness, set it aside so we can move on to the next part. Grab a medium-sized yellow onion, cut the top off, the side that doesn't have the hair, and then cut it in half. After it's been cut into 2, peel all the skin off. Slice the veg that makes people weep with salty tears into 1/4-inch half-moon pieces. The onion will be a nice base of flavor to make our overall dish tasty in the end. Time to move on to the main ingredient of this dish, also known as chicken. We'll be using 4 chicken breasts that are roughly medium to large in size. Clean your chicks up by cutting off any extra fat or any other spots that don't look good. You'll notice the chicken breast is thicker on one side and then it tapers off to be a little thinner on the other end. We want to achieve a nice even cook, so that means we need to slightly flatten out the chicken. Before we get to flattening our protein, we need to prevent the spread of any bacteria. Cover your chicken breast with some plastic wrap. Ensure the piece of wrap is big enough to fully cover the goods. You can also use a zip top style bag to achieve the same thing. Once you've figured out what protective layer you'll be using, it's time to blow off some steam. Use your favorite smash washing tool for the job. Give the thicker side of the protein a few good whacks until the chicken is in one even layer all the way across. Don't use too much force because we don't want to rip the chicken breast in half. A good medium force should get the job done. Repeat this until all 4 pieces are flattened out. Now that the chicky chicks are good to go, we need to find the holding devices that we'll be using to put them into so they can be tossed into the vessel. I'm going to be using 2 different bags for this video. One is a reusable vacuum sealed bag and the others are some freezer zip top style bags. If you have a fancy vacuum sealer, of course use that. When you've figured out your pliable container situation, open them all up. Situate them so they sit flat and stay open. This way it will make bagging things that much easier. Divide the sliced onion up between however many bags you decided to use. Following that, we'll add our chick next. Lightly season each piece with coarse ground kosher salt. Do your best not to touch the outside or the top of the bag with the chicken. We don't want to spread the bacteria. When deciding how many bags to use, a good rule of thumb is to ensure that none of the chicken will be touching or overlapping one another, so you may need to use a small bag for each chicken breast or a couple large bags that will have enough room for both pieces. This will help ensure each piece will be cooked properly. I went with 2 smaller ones and 1 large bag to achieve this. After you've made it hail salt, transfer the goods over. The last thing we need to do is add our sauce. Before you add it, give it a quick mix. Things may have settled at the bottom of the bowl. Do your best to evenly divide the sauciness up between all the goods. Now that everything has been distributed, give the bags a quick mix up to coat the chicken in the sauce. We need to seal the bags off, but first we need to ensure we take all or as much as possible of the air out of each bag. We'll be using the water displacement method to accomplish this. Take your bag, zip it almost all the way closed, leaving about 2 inches open on one side. Once you have that, slowly dip the bag into the water, ensuring the 2-inch opening is fully open, allowing all the air to be released. Submerge the bag in the water until it hits the opening. After you've hit this point, zip it completely closed to seal it shut. Water is denser than air, which will create enough pressure and force to push all the air out of the goodie bags. Following the short dip in the water, we need to make sure each piece of chicken is laying flat in the holding device. This will help make sure things cook evenly and properly. If you have 2 pieces in one bag, besides making sure they lay flat, also ensure they are not touching one another. When the sous vide finally hits our desired temp, it's time to send the goods for a swim. You may need to put something on top of them to help prevent them from floating. We need the goods to stay fully submerged in the water. Toss the top back onto the vessel of H2O. Set a timer and cook the chicken for 1 hour and 30 minutes long. This time and temp will fully cook the chicken and will produce a super tender and juicy piece of meat. You may be worried about the temp being set too low to fully cook and make the chicken safe. With this method, we'll be cooking the chicken at a even and consistent temp for a long period of time, which will pasteurize the protein, killing any bacteria that may be present. Time and temperature plays a huge factor in cooking and food safety itself. That's what's so fun about cooking. There are a few methods to achieve the same end goal. While the bird cooks, now would be a great time to catch up on dishes or make any side dishes that would go great with this, like maybe a veg or some rice. What's nice about the immersion circulator is we don't have to do anything but wait now. You may randomly check on it to make sure it still has power and to see how much longer it has to cook, but that's about all you need to do. Once the buzzer has rang, pull the chicken bags out of the water. Allow the sous vide machine to fully dry before you put it away. You can pull the chicken and onions out of the bag and dig in, or you can do more work like I did. Grab a medium-sized saucepan and a fine mesh strainer. Pull the chicken out and set it aside for now. Pour the onion and sauce into the strainer that's atop of the saucepan. Before you take the onions out of the strainer, press on them to help release the soy sauce / juices they hold. Repeat this until all the goodie bags have been strained and drained. Do not toss the onions, we can eat them. Set the onions aside for meow. Next, we need to make a slurry to thicken our sauce. Grab a small holding device. To that, we'll add 1 tablespoon of cold water. Following that, add 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Whisk your face off to bring the 2 things together until they become a thin, milky liquid. Take the saucepan and the slurry over to the heating element. Crank the heat to a medium level of hotness. Allow the teriyaki sauce to come up to a light simmer. When it hits a simmer, we'll pour our slurry into the pan in a slow, steady stream. While you pour, you also need to be whisking whisking it into the sauce at the same time. This will help prevent things from becoming a clumpy mess. A pro tip, ensure you mix your slurry again before you add it into the pot. The starch will settle on the bottom of the container and will need to be mixed back in with the water. After the slurry has been added to the pot, allow the sauce to come up to a light boil. Cook it for 4 to 5 minutes, continuing to whisk the goods. This cooking process will activate the slurry to thicken the sauce. We are shooting for the sauce to be nappe in consistency, which means if you dip a spoon in the sauce and coat the back of it and run your fingy down the middle, the sauce should stay in place. If it's not quite there, continue to cook the sauce on a low temp for a few minutes. The sauce will reduce and become thicker in viscosity. It's time to move on to the last few steps to finish this recipe off. Grab a large saute pan, the onion, the protein, and take it over to the thing that cooks things. To the pan, add about a teaspoon of avocado oil or any other type of cooking oil that has a high smoke point. Turn the heat up to a medium level. Allow the oil to become ripping hot. Drop a few onions into the pan. If it sizzles immediately, you know your pan is ready. They are already cooked, but all we're trying to do at this point is slightly caramelize the sugars that they hold. Cook them for 4 to 5 minutes or until they become golden brown in color. Now that they've been colored, clear the onions out of the pan. After that, add another small amount of oil that will coat the bottom of the pan. The pan should still be hot. We need to sear our chicken off to get that nice brown color on the chick. Sear the chicken on both sides for 2 to 3 minutes or until it becomes a nice golden brown. Do this over a medium-high heat. Repeat this step until everything has been blasted with color. After the pan has been cleared, turn the heat completely off. Add about half of your sauce to the pan. Toss your chicken back into the hot, bubbly bath of sauce to coat the protein in the sauciness. Do the same with the onions. A pro tip before you add the sauce, add a little bit of warm water to the pan first. This will slightly cool the pan down. We'll lose the water to evaporation, which is fine, instead of losing our sauce. After you hit it with the water, then you can add your sauce and then coat your goods with it. Our recipe is done now. You can eat the chicken breast whole as it is, or you can cube it up to throw it over some rice and veg. If you have any sauce left over, add it to your dish. Also, don't forget to add the onions to your chicken. This stuff would make for a great dish to serve for a party or make for an easy weeknight meal. You could also make them into meal prep meals. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy.
Alright, now that our sous vide teriyaki chicken is done, let's give it the old taste roux. So looking at it, came out super tasty looking. The chicken itself looks really juicy and it looks like it's going to be super tender. If you have x-ray vision or to squint hard enough, you can see the chicken got that nice hard sear on it, which is going to bring a ton of flavor to the table, and it also looks nice. It looks super saucy as well, and the onion on top makes it look aesthetically pleasing, and it looks like it's going to add a ton of flavor, and they just look delicious as well. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to eat out of this because it just looks better. Just try the chicken on its own. A little bit of sauce. Get some onion in there, why not? Come on now. Any day. This stuff came out super dang good. The glaze, or the teriyaki sauce itself, is super flavorful. The first thing that hits your palate is that umami soy sauce flavor. We get some sweetness from our brown sugar. The acid from the rice vinegar helps cut through that richness of the soy sauce and that saltiness that it holds, and helps cut through the sweetness as well, and just makes it more well-rounded and balanced of a sauce. The acid also helps cut through the richness of the chicken. And in the background, you get a ton of flavor from that base of our garlic, ginger, and onion, and it adds that pop of freshness as well. The chicken on its own is super tasty. It's soaked up all that delicious goodness. And we got that caramelization on the outside that also brings some flavor to the table. The onions themselves also soaked up all that goodness as well, and they're really good. Texture-wise, the onions are nice and crunchy. Then the chicken itself is super juicy and tender, and you can cut it with a spoon. I tried, and it definitely worked. All together, this thing is just well balanced and pretty much perfect. It's convenient to have a sous vide machine on hand because we put very little effort into this recipe and we got a great result in the end. So it's nice to have one on hand. And you can pretty much do whatever you want with this recipe. Maybe crank up the ginger level because you love ginger so much, or you can make it spicy, which sounds super tasty. There's pretty much endless opportunities. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. I think I'm gonna go turn this chicken into some meal prep meals. So I gotta cook some rice and some veggies. So I'm gonna go do that, and we'll see you on the next one. First thing you hit, you don't hit, and pop a flavor. Vinegar helps make it more well-rounded and balanced. Having a sous vide machine is super convenient, so you should definitely have one on hand. That's probably why you're watching this video. Spices or a chili oil to make it really good, which sounds super tasty.